What am I saying again?
This is MPW.
MPW.
The podcast.
With your host,
Xylo Aria. Cool.
A podcast about music production
for the everyday musician,
where we learn from experienced studio engineers and each other.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the MPW podcast. I'm your host, Xylo Aria, and I'm super excited today to welcome our guest, Damien Lewis. So Damien is a Grammy-nominated producer and mixing engineer, originally from Detroit, and he's currently living in LA and has worked with just some massive names, including Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy Perry, Janelle Monáe, just to name a few, and across so many genres. And yeah, really excited to have you on this podcast today, Damien. So hello.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here. You're making me wish I had some sort of accent.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
well,
that was the best sounding intro ever, I think. Yeah. Anytime I need an introduction, I know where I'm going.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Be happy to. So, Damien, as I mentioned, I'm in Melbourne, and I'll tell you, I have not scheduled a 9 a.m. meeting for I don't know how long. So
it's 9 a.m.
this is how much I wanted to talk to you today.
Man, I'm sorry. I didn't even think about that.
No, that's totally fine. So it's 4 p.m. there for you today. So how's your day been so far?
It's good. I'm ready for a drink. I've worked on a bunch of different records and I risked my life going to the grocery store. So I think I've done it all today.
Yeah, it does feel like that at the moment, doesn't it?
Oh, it's insane.
But you were saying you're kind of in your element, just kind of working away in your space. And
yeah, luckily I've been training for this kind of lifestyle for about 15 years, being self-isolated and being on the computer all day. So yeah, it's working out okay, actually.
Yeah, perfect. No, it's good. It's good. You've been in training, which is excellent. Yeah, so usually what we do is we go into our topic today, which is vocal mixing.
Right.
So before we do that, however, I'd love to hear from you about your journey into production and where it all started for you and how you got to where you are today in a short summary.
In the shortest way possible. Okay. I grew up in the music business somewhat. My dad was a live sound guy, and he worked for a bunch of like 70s and 80s bands around Detroit. Blue Oyster Cult, Foghat, Mitch Ryder, and the Detroit Wheels. So he was a live sound guy. So I grew up around musicians, and those guys were always around, and they'd take me around in the tour bus when they were in town and stuff. From there, fell in love with playing the drums from like a very early age. And I was going to be a drummer, like dead set on being a drummer. And I did that for a long time and toured all around the world in a blues band, playing like 300 nights a year all over the place.
Wow.
Yeah, and had been a drummer on a couple studio albums at that point and just kind of got into the process. And my dad, unfortunately, passed away early, and I inherited like his live console, his recording console for live shows, and a bunch of cheap microphones and stuff, and started recording at home. And I was like maybe 21, 22 at the time. And I started getting pretty good at it, recording my friends, and then had a studio in my house, and then eventually got good enough to move out of there and shared a space with a couple of the guys who are in the Zac Brown band now. It was 3 of the guys from the Zac Brown band, if you're familiar with them. So we had a big shared studio space in Atlanta. From there, went on to work with Phil Tan as his assistant, mixing assistant. Worked on a bunch of huge pop records with him. And that's when I really was like, okay, I'm going to become a mixer now, and really like honed in on that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of time lapsed in between there. It takes a long time. But,
I was going to say, that's a pretty summarized summary.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. So was most your learning kind of on the job then?
Completely, 100% experience, no school or anything like that. Yeah.
Cool.
And it was hard back then too, because YouTube granted, it wasn't a long time ago. We're talking like the early 2000s, but like YouTube wasn't really the vast pool of knowledge where it is now, where it's like, oh, I want to learn how to mic something. I want to learn how to use a console. Like that didn't really exist. I remember writing Full Sail, the audio college, and getting old textbooks from them on how to use an SSL recording console.
Wow.
Because I didn't have access to one. I couldn't get into a studio with one, but like I knew that's what the pros used.
Did you consider actually like going to a college, or did you just prefer learning on the job?
No, I didn't. Yeah, it never really seemed like it was for me. I was always of the mindset like you kind of need to like learn these things in the streets, and same thing with being a musician, you know. The academic route is fantastic for some people and it really works for them. But like for me, I'm not that kind of person. So
No, totally. And yeah, on the streets. I love that.
yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it's nice to know that you've gone down that route. I think a few people that we had on the podcast before kind of went down the kind of studying production and engineering and then going down that way. And yeah, it's cool that everyone kind of has their own path to it, and some are just so different to others, and you all kind of end up where you are now. So
yeah, that's what can be frustrating about the music business is there's no direct
path.
Point A to point B path. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not like you decide you want to be a banker and you start out as a teller and then you're a manager and then, you know, for us, it's completely, it can go in any direction and there's no right or wrong way to get there.
Yeah, exactly. And I was talking to a mastering engineer in the UK recently, and he was saying you can't really join the dots moving forward, but you can join them looking backwards.
Oh, that's true. That's a good analogy.
Yeah, and I guess it's true for pretty much everyone I've spoken to.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, that's cool and good to know your background. So we are talking about vocal mixing, as I mentioned. So usually we define the topic, but yeah, did you want to give like a one sentence in what you're trying to achieve when you're mixing vocals, or defining it, I guess?
I guess the simplest way would be I just want to make the vocal sound incredible and translate no matter where you hear it or what you hear it on.
Cool.
Right? So there's an infinite number of devices you can listen to something on now, and everything sounds a little different. So we're trying to find that sweet spot in the middle where it sounds good no matter where you hear it.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So believe it or not, it doesn't come out of the studio sounding the way it sounds when you hear it on the radio.
Oh, yeah. So you work on it after that?
Yeah. So after it's recorded, there's not a whole lot of thought put into, not a whole lot of thought, I take that back. There's not a whole lot of emphasis put on the way that a vocal sounds while it's being recorded. You're more of in a state of capturing everything.
Yeah.
Then once it's all captured, you give it to a specialist like myself to really polish it and make it sound as good as it possibly can.
Okay. Yeah, cool. That's a good kind of starting point of what you're trying to achieve, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who aren't familiar with the process see like an old film or something of the recording studio and everyone's standing around hanging out and the singer sings it and they're like, okay, that's it. Perfect. Great. Like the process kind of just begins at that point, really.
Oh, definitely. There's, I feel like, I don't know, is that even the start or like closer to the early stage than kind of where it gets to at the end? I feel like there's so much work.
Yeah, there's a lot of manipulation on the back end now. And it's the same for any sort of digital medium, whether you're like a photographer or a videographer or anything like that. Like we rely so much on the backside of editing now for everything. Where back in the day, in the analog days, I think you're trying to like really capture something in the moment that was going to be pretty close to the final product, because you didn't have the capabilities of all the extreme editing that you do now. So
definitely. Yeah, exactly. I can't even imagine how vastly things have changed from that time. So I guess if we start from kind of the start of the process of where you jump in to where you take it. So I guess for you, where things would start is you're handed over a bunch of stems from a producer. Yeah. So
the producer will finish a track. Sometimes it'll be the producer that sends it to me. Sometimes it's people at the record label, the A&R manager or something like that.
Yeah.
But in any case, the song is a group of stems of audio files. Sometimes it's a Pro Tools session. Sometimes it's not. And they'll give me a rough mix of what they've been listening to for however long they've been working on the song and say, okay, this is kind of where it's at. Now do your thing and take it to the next level. So that's where I get started, basically, studying what they've been doing. And then, I'll listen to it a few times and get in my head like what I want to do to the song, and then just start mixing and balancing.
Cool. And do you always mix on Pro Tools?
Yeah. Anything like commercial that you're going to hear definitely ends up on Pro Tools. I like to write in Logic and Ableton, and I use them both differently depending on what kind of music I'm working on.
Yeah.
So I love them all, but at the end of the day, everything's going to end up in Pro Tools, basically.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of the industry standard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just the audio editing is so good. It sounds really, really good. I feel like the audio engine is a little better sounding in Pro Tools than the other DAWs. Yeah, so for me, editing in Pro Tools is where it's at.
Yeah, cool. So once you get these stems, what is the next process? So you've listened to their mix, and then, what do you do in Pro Tools?
Well, I mean, it may be kind of boring to hear the whole process, but...
Well, actually, there were a couple of questions about workflow, and I think it's
great. Well,
really
I'll walk you through it
important
then.
Yeah. Just understand, I guess, your setup and what you do to set everything up and get started.
So I'll get the package of stems, import them all into Pro Tools. First thing is label everything. I'll go through all the sounds, and I have a like a protocol when you send me files to mix of this is the way I expect files. 90% of people do it, but sometimes they don't. So a big thing for me, never seeing a song before or hearing a song, is I need to know what everything is. If everything is just audio 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm completely lost, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I go through everything, label what's not labeled, then organize it. So I have my drums, and I'll color code everything, my drums, my basses, my synths, my guitars, so on and so on. So everything's like color coded and organized. I cut out all the dead space where there's no audio because I just want to see regions where audio is actually playing.
There's a really quick way to do that in Pro Tools, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a couple.
To cut out the...
Yeah, if you put the cursor on a region, you can hit A and it trims everything to the left of it. Or you can put it to the right and hit S and it trims everything to the right. Or you can highlight the piece that you want to trim and hit Command T and it trims off both sides. So to me, that's the fastest way.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's a monotonous process too by the time you do that across, if I get something with 100 tracks or something like that, like my wrist is tired just from setting up everything.
Yeah.
So then I drop all my arrangement markers because this is assuming that it was a song that was done in a different DAW. It's not in Pro Tools already. So I basically have to build it from the ground up, So put all my arrangement markers down. So now I'm color coded, I'm organized. Then I bring in my template tracks, which are just a series of effects sends and returns that I like to route audio through that have all my plugins that I like to use on them in active. And that just speeds things up. I don't really like to mix through a template in the sense like everything has to go through this chain because everything is so different. So I don't like force myself into that, but I do like to see all the stuff I use commonly up on the screen. And if I want to use this or that, I can just make it active and it's there ready to go. And then, from there, I actually start with the vocals first. I start working on the vocals first. A lot of people start with the drums first. And I could see why. I used to do that when I was younger because it's exciting. Like it's cool to get like a banging drum beat going. But what I found is every single time I created more work for myself because I'd get the beat going. And by the time it sounded good, I'd go to the vocals and there wouldn't be any room for them because your brain just naturally fills that space sonically. So you're going to push up synths or guitars louder in areas that occupy where the vocals need to be just because you're not hearing the vocals. You're kind of looking for that instrument that becomes a lead in your mind, right? So then I'd get to the vocals and I'd be out of headroom. I'd be out of audio headroom, just actual, because the beat would be super loud. But more importantly, I'd be out of sonic headroom. There wouldn't be a place for the vocal to fit. So then I'd end up getting the vocals sounding good and I'd have to rebalance everything again. And as soon as I had that epiphany and I started doing the vocals first and then brought the drums into the vocals, suddenly I saved a complete cycle of going around and having to redo everything again. Because at the end of the day, the vocals are the only thing that matters. The beat's the beat and it's cool and it's fun to listen to and stuff. But like if the vocal doesn't sound good, you have nothing. It's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I guess people have their own way that they like to work, but logically that seems to make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
to
it
start
works for
with
me.
Kind of the most important part of the song.
Yeah, it works for me. Again, there's a million ways to do this and there are no rules and there are fantastic mixers that swear by starting the other way around. But like, for me, it made the most sense. And it was also, it's about creating the most like direct workflow.
Yeah.
As soon as I find myself chasing my tail and undoing something and then redoing, it's like, oh man, okay, there has to be a better way to do this.
Yeah, that's so true. So once you've got everything set up and color coded and all the silence is cut out and renamed and things are looking good.
Yeah.
So do you have a certain thing that you like, or kind of a series of how you like to mix? For example, do you start with like volume balancing and then panning or something like that?
Typically EQ. I start to just kind of carve things up and make some space and get them to sound where I think they need to sound. A lot of times it's more like a subtractive stage. So I'll go into the vocal and I'll find the annoying frequencies and start to notch them out and stuff like that. So I really start to kind of like do subtractive EQ before I just start adding gobs of things.
Yeah.
But occasionally something just like catches your ear and you're like, oh man, that part's super cool. That's kind of like the essence of this track. And you really want to work on that and make that piece special for a minute. But so yeah, my first step is kind of subtractive, fixing problems. There might be bad edits. I'll go through and clip gain all the vocals if some stuff was recorded super quiet and then some stuff was super loud. My first pass over that is to clip gain everything so that it's kind of hitting my first compressor at a fairly even rate. So it's not just...
Can you define clip gain for anyone that's not familiar with it?
Yeah, so clip gain in Pro Tools, and all the DAWs do it, but it allows you to turn up a specific clip of audio up or down. So if something was recorded real quietly and then the next line was super loud, you can go in there, cut the two pieces, and then even them out so they have a little more steady volume. And that just makes your processing that follows that work that much smoother.
So then you'll EQ everything, and then do you go into compression or anything else after that?
In terms of vocals, yeah, so they're usually EQ, and then lately it's been Soothe. There's a plugin called Soothe 2.
Okay.
Which,
What's that?
yeah, for those of you out there that do a lot of vocals, it's a fantastic plugin. It is like an EQ, but it works in a sort of intelligent sense. So it finds anything that's harmonically poking out, like any sort of resonance in the voice, and it automatically notches that out for you. And it's active. So it's not like if you were to EQ something and say it was a little nasally, you would cut out a piece with EQ. That's always on unless you automate it to turn off. This thing is active, so it only kicks in when that thing crosses a certain threshold.
I see.
So that makes that makes vocals really smooth. And we used to do a lot of that with automation, having EQ come on just for a certain, maybe the chorus got very, very brittle sounding and the verses were lower in her voice and sounded thicker.
Yeah.
And you'd EQ automation to come on and off during those sections. Now with a plugin like Soothe, you reduce a lot of that through AI.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah, there's some really cool tools right now.
Yeah.
I'm all for
exciting.
like making the job easier.
Oh, definitely. And you should be. I don't know why you don't have to go down the hard part.
Yeah, I mean, for a while there was like some blowback where people were like, oh, it's just one knob you turn and you don't even know what you're doing with it, and for all sorts of plugins. So it's like, no, these are great. Are you kidding me? These engineers like combined all of these processes into one knob that you turn and it just sounds better. Like, I'll take that all day.
Exactly. And even if it is just one knob, if you're understanding what exactly it's doing, then why not?
Sometimes I don't even care what it's doing. I just want it to be better.
Yeah.
The explanation of what it's doing is great, but like, this sounds good. Cool.
Yeah. No knob sounds bad. With the knob sounds good. So yeah.
And I kind of think about all plugins like that. Really, they're just like palettes. They're like colors on a palette to me. I don't really care if it's a saturation plugin or a tube plugin or whatever. I just care how it sounds or what it looks like. Like that's all that matters to me.
That is all that matters, really. Yeah. So if we're talking about pop vocals, is there a particular way you like to treat most pop vocals?
Yeah.
After the early kind of correction phase?
Yeah. Well, the thing about pop vocals is like they're very, very present and in your face and loud and crisp. So they get a lot of processing, a ton of compression. And I do this over multiple compressors. So it's not just one compressor plugin working super hard the whole time, but it might be doing 2 to 4 dB per instance.
Okay.
And down the line, there's like several instances of compression because I might be using something like Waves RVox on there, Fab Filter Pro C2, and then probably like an SSL channel strip that's doing some compression too. Then usually a multiband compressor, Fab Filter Pro MB or Waves C6. And then I'm really focusing on notching out frequencies and like overall tonal balance. And then maybe something like an LA2A at the end or an 1176 or something like that. So like right there, that's what, like 4 or 5 stages of compression just on a lead vocal.
Wow.
So cumulatively, we're probably looking at, I don't know, 15, 20 dB of gain reduction maybe. And that's also feeding a parallel bus, which is getting slammed by a compressor, like a distressor or 1176 or something like that. And that's blended into the lead vocal. All of those vocals are then going to an all vocals group that has another layer or two of compression on it. Not doing much, maybe a dB or two, but just holding the whole group together. Parallel bus or parallel processing is the easiest way to think of it is making a copy of something. And in this case, we would copy the lead vocal, put a ton of compression on it, like an absurd amount, and blend a little bit of that copy into the original. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that in Pro Tools or Ableton or Logic or whatever. Like an infinite amount of ways that you can route audio around to do that.
And when you say copy, you don't mean copy the exact file or
It
just
could
route
be.
it to a different track?
Yeah, you can do it both ways. It depends on how you like to do it. Yeah, you can make an actual copy of the track and put the plugin on there, or you can just use your buses to route it to an aux track and then blend that aux track back into your original. So yeah, if there's one thing that we could say about like pop, R&B, like modern stuff like that, like tons of compression. And that's what keeps it in your face.
Yeah.
It's not meant to
for
be
sure.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Like every single line
um,
is meant to be like in the top of the record, in your face, aggressive. It should cut through no matter where you're listening to it on. Automation, vocal automation, like volume rides.
Yeah, for sure. So you said a ton of compression
Yeah.
in every phase of what you're doing on the track, on the group, on the parallel bus as well.
Yeah.
So just everywhere.
Yeah.
And then is there a next stage that you get onto?
For vocals specifically?
Yeah.
Well, I would say probably like, yeah, the next stage I guess would be the vocal automation, would be all of the volume rides. So I get in there and really I go line by line with the mouse and just automate every word. So if something's a little quiet, that comes up. Something's a little loud, that comes down. Things like S's,
Yeah.
I'll really duck those really hard because those can get really annoying.
You do that manually.
Yeah, I'll use a de-esser also, but there's something
Yeah.
about just lowering the volume of them that just makes it work much better. In addition,
Wow. I never thought about doing
yeah,
that. And
it's a hard process. It's really annoying, and it takes like an hour or two to do a lead vocal. It's worth it in the end, and that's how you get it to really, really pop. Yeah, there's no shortcuts for that. Like if you ask any of the guys, like if you see my vocal automation, it's just like squiggly lines
oh my
all over the place.
God. Wow, that's next level.
Yeah, it makes it sound amazing though, because it's
Yeah.
weird because like when you start to really compress things too, you start to bring out a lot of nasty stuff. You start to bring out all the lip smacking and the
Oh,
S's.
yeah.
So then you have to kind of like go in there and, get all that stuff out. And some words for whatever reason are just more difficult to hear than other words, depending on what's happening in
Okay.
the beat and stuff. So lots of automation would happen next.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. That is a lot of work. I mean,
Yeah.
editing vocals or anything with vocals just takes so long. And I mean, your process is like times 100 of that. So
Yeah.
But-
There are some shortcuts for people out there like Wave's Vocal Rider. If you have that plugin, that kind of like does a decent job at kind of detecting when it needs to come up or down. But
yeah, but I mean, that's how you get those really big pop vocals. So
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. And then after your hours and hours of volume automation.
well, then I guess it's start to bring the beat in. Well, I'm not spending hours and hours on the vocal yet at that point. Like I've spent
Okay.
a decent amount of time, but I want to get in all of the surrounding elements so I can hear everything. So at that point, I'll probably do like what I would call a static mix, is just get everything in so I can hear it. And that includes clip gaining a lot of the instrumental tracks. Maybe they're super hot and just need to come down in volume, just so I can begin to like pull everything together. Mixing's really weird. Like for a long time, you feel really far away, like you'll never get it done. And like, it just doesn't
Yeah.
sound anything like it should. And then, in the last like hour or two, it comes together instantly. It's really
Wow.
a strange thing. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So
That's
then I'm
cool.
bringing in all the instrument tracks and it's starting to sound like the final mix at that point.
And is that kind of when you get into effects?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good point too. is, yeah, I'll get the vocal effects on pretty early. Decide what kind of reverb I want to use. Usually by listening to the rough, I can kind of tell like what kind of reverb it should be. I have a lot of reverb plugins. I love reverb.
Oh, doesn't everyone?
Yeah. It's a really fun part to me is making the decision on what kind of reverb to use. I'll use different kinds occasionally for like the verse or pre or chorus. Verses are typically drier. And then as the song ramps up in energy and arrangement, sometimes, you get more and more reverb on stuff. So there's automation, a lot of like effects automation also, turning delays on and off for certain parts that we want, like an echo and stuff like that.
Do you have a favorite reverb for main vocals?
Yeah. Valhalla Vintage Verb.
Oh yeah, it's such a popular one, that one.
Yeah, love that one. I love the 480 lexicon that UAD makes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I love the Slate Verb Suite Classics, that's a great plugin because it emulates like a bunch of the classic machines. So for a pretty low amount of money, you can have access to, thousands of dollars worth of reverbs. The Bricasti M7 in particular, that's my all-time favorite reverb ever made. It's a hardware unit. I don't own one, but the impulse responses are in the Slate plugin.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
the Bricasti
Okay.
M7 is the greatest reverb.
Yeah. Cool. Well, do you always go down the digital route, or do you think there's a benefit of using analog if you have it available to you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I love the idea of using analog because I really do. But it's just a pain, man. Like by the time you bounce something out and print it back in, and then as soon as you do that, the client's going to be like, oh, we redid that word.
Change something.
Yeah. And you're just creating more trouble than it's worth. For that little bit of something that only you're going to notice, your consumer's not going to notice it at the end of the day, it's not worth it because like you got to get the job done and get paid and move on with your life. And
Definitely.
plus, the new stuff is so good too. When I first started using Pro Tools, the plugin sucked.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, you had Deverb, the stock thing, and like I don't know, they're so good now. I don't miss any of that stuff.
That's good. And again, it's about making your life easier, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's amazing that anyone can have access to this stuff too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about production, it's just becoming so much more and more accessible to everyone. And yeah, and you don't really need to spend obviously as much as you needed to before, but even, considering that, people can get started with a lot less than they might think.
Yeah, Logic's $200. You got everything you need there.
Yeah, exactly. So you get onto the effects. So you've got your automation of different things. You'd probably use some reverb and delay. Are there any other effects that you use quite often on vocals and pop vocals particularly?
Yeah, but so besides the obvious like reverb and delay, Soundtoys Microshift. So what that is, it's a very, very subtle pitch shifter and doubler. So it makes things appear a little bit wider and thicker. That's great on background vocals, great on lead vocals. That being said, yeah, some sort of doubler is usually on the lead vocal just to like thicken things up. That could be Waves makes one, Valhalla makes a great one. So yeah, I'm using one of those usually. And I have a couple just like saucy delays set up, different timed like throw delays. They're like the answer back echoes. They're always kind of ready to go. And my delays usually have like a string of effects on them. So it's not just a delay plugin. It'll be a delay into a reverb into like microshift. Delays sound a little weird when they're dry and don't have reverb on them. So I'll have like several chains going after my delay itself. And I just discovered a great preset. It's called Dark Ambience in Deverb.
Okay. I love the name already.
Yeah. I saw Jason Joshua was using it. He's a big hip hop mixer. And that's a stock setting in Deverb called Dark Ambience. And man, it just like puts the vocal right up in your face. It's so cool. It's not really like a reverb. It's like a very, very short ambience.
Wow. Okay.
So that's a cool little trick to like add some space and depth and like intimacy is very, very short reverb. Because normally you associate reverb with big, long cathedral echoes, right? But you can use them in very, very short times to create space, which is a good trick.
Okay, cool. How often, or of the effects that you mentioned, will you send majority of them, or will you kind of add them directly to, or insert them into a track?
That's a good question. I typically use sends and automation, but there are certain times when it's easier to drag it down to a track. And for me, that's when I need to like really control the tail of it. So a lot of times, like when you're automating a send to come on and off, you create a lot of work because then you have to go down to the return. And sometimes you need to automate the return down or up also. Sometimes it's easier just to drag that clip onto a new track with your echo at 100% and draw your automation there, or just hit commit and then fade it down. So yeah, there are certain times where I will drag something down to a clip. I have friends that that's their like primary way of doing it. They always do that. So there's great things about both ways, but yeah, I think I'm just used to using send automation.
Cool.
Good question.
And yeah, because I quite enjoy kind of sometimes adding things directly to a track. It gives it a bit of a different feel as well, I guess.
It does. And I think a part of that is because I'm like lazy and my reverbs and delays are so dialed in at this point. I know exactly what they're going to do. So like if I started doing it track based, I would have to kind of redo them all because the wet dry balance is a little different.
Yeah, no, fair enough. That makes sense. And one thing I wanted to ask earlier, actually, which was, when you're getting these tracks from the producer or the A&R with vocals, do you see like a kind of pattern with pop vocals of what stems you're receiving? For example, main, a double, a backing vocal, harmony, whatever it is. Is there like a formula that you see more often?
Not really. It's kind of all over the place. The good thing is like huge background stacks have kind of gone out of style recently. I think it was like Justin Bieber and Pooh Bear with What Do You Mean? And like, when Justin came and kind of like reinvented himself. And it was just kind of like one vocal and a harmony.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, Pooh Bear was the guy that wrote most of that stuff. Fantastic writer here in LA. And he's very like anti-harmony. But he came up in the harmony days in like the 90s. He was writing R&B songs. He wrote like Peaches and Cream when he was 18 or something like that. Yeah. So songs have become a little more simple in regard to like huge amounts of background stacks. So I'm getting a lot less of that. But I would say as a general, like, if you're going to stack something, there's usually like 4 to 6 stacks, and they'll be panned like hard left, right, and then maybe 2 that are like 50% left, right. And then, that changes greatly.
And then with your main, would you have the one track or would you have doubles of that as well?
Yeah, there's doubles occasionally, like on the choruses and stuff like that. My goal for those is to make them so you don't notice it. That's really just there to kind of like fatten up the main vocal. So I want it to be like, I'll mix it to where you can hear it and then turn it down a little bit more. And then that's kind of in the right spot.
And I guess you treat things differently based on whether they're main vocals or background vocals or whatever it is. And is there a kind of rule that you use as far as like, do you cut out certain frequencies from the backing for the main or something like that?
There's not necessarily a rule. It's kind of like whatever works. I end up saying that a lot. Like, it depends. But,
do you know how many times I've got that already? That's fine.
Yeah. So sometimes they just like need to be breathy and airy to create that feeling. Sometimes they need to be darker and just more subtle to fit in and not be annoying and not get in the way of the lead. So it could happen anyway. There's no like hard or fast rule for me.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
And again, their backgrounds, like I don't overthink it. If they're there and they sound cool and they're not annoying, we're good.
I guess we've gone through most of the process of what you do in what you're doing with mixing vocals. Are there any particular tricks that you do and you really love that you think is not what someone might normally do?
It's not too common.
Yeah.
Let's see. Nothing like jumps out in my mind.
Yeah.
One thing maybe is like the super intense volume automation. I think a lot of people that aren't professional mixers or something like that, they kind of see that and be like, wow, like you do that many vocal rides and it does make a difference in the end. But I wouldn't say there's any sort of like magic bullet to get there.
Okay. How important do you think spending money is when you're mixing. Would you recommend that someone go out and buy all these plugins that you mentioned? Or
No, definitely
kind of
not. I think it's more important to learn what you have and just get really, really good with it. Because at the end of the day, like, the tools are nice and stuff to have, but like, if you don't really have a thorough understanding of it and know how it works and know how to achieve the result that you want, then it's not really worth the money. People like me that are mixers are in a weird situation where it's like, I have to have everything because when you send me a session, I want it to open up just the way you left it. So in a way, I kind of get cornered into buying or getting endorsements for tons of stuff. But that being said, like, I don't know, I still read manuals for EQs, for software EQs and stuff, software plugins.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll be something be like, wow, I had no idea that's what that did. Even at this point in my career, I'm still reading manuals for software, which is crazy. But I don't know, I really want to understand it.
I guess that's the other thing of how quickly things are changing. There's probably, different features being added all the time.
Or even like old wave stuff where it's like, I know I never really knew what that button did. Like, like on the LA2A, there's a little silver threshold screw on there. Probably no one even knows what that does, but like it does something.
Yeah. Do you know now?
I do.
Okay, good.
It's also found on the hardware on the LA2A compressor. It makes it more sensitive to high frequencies. Okay. So when you turn it counterclockwise, it almost like becomes a de-esser. The compressor reacts to like the 6K range more sensitively. But like no one ever turns that thing. It just, you'll see it when you open it up and you look at that silver screw and think about that. So
be like, I know what that does, guys. So
but that goes to understanding your tools, right? So like your LA2A can also be a de-esser of sorts.
Which is cool. Cool. So before we get into our audience questions, do you have a favorite thing about what you do as a job and your least favorite thing?
My favorite thing is it's really satisfying to send something to people and they're like, holy shit, this is great.
I'm sure.
That's really satisfying. And also like hearing something in public is really satisfying. Oh, what's really satisfying too is going to see the band and seeing them perform the track like to your stems.
Oh, wow.
So like with pop music, cool. There's obviously tons of stems running in the background. That's super cool. That's like a very fulfilling feeling to see people singing along and be like, oh man, the 808 sounds awesome in this club or stadium or whatever, Least favorite part would be, it can get a bit monotonous. It's a lot of mouse clicking. It's a lot of organizing. I'm pretty lucky that I don't deal with a ton of revisions. I'm at this point, I'm not really getting like laundry lists back. It happens from time to time. At a certain point, like as a mixer, you have to kind of put your ego aside because your job is to deliver them the record that they want. Whether you think it's right or wrong is not really relevant. So if the A&R guy is like really dead set on this needs to be much louder or this needs to be much quieter, you have to do it. And like, I used to get kind of like upset about it. Like, what do they know? And, but learning to put that aside and deliver them the record that they want was like a huge breakthrough for me. And then of course, like with anything else in the music business, just like steady work is difficult for anyone and getting paid is difficult for everyone. So as a mixer, after you do a job, then you send an invoice and then you wait a month to 3 months to get paid for it.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of jobs out there like that.
No, that's true.
So you have to stay working steady for income to be retroactively coming in. So that's a frustrating part of it.
Okay, cool. So we'll go through a couple of the questions that I received for you. So like I said, I've cut this down because there were just too many.
We'll do segment 2 one day.
Yeah. So the first one is from Jacqueline Palmer from the UK. And she says, is there any way that you treat other mid-range elements, such as synths, to make sure that your vocals really stand out? She said, no matter what she tries to do, she finds it hard to get the vocals to sit on top of the mix.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing. That comes along with experience because there's only so much sonic headroom that you have there. So you can try a couple things. One, you can use some sort of EQ that has MS functionality, mid-side functionality, like FabFilter Pro Q3 or Q2. Or you can pull out some mid-range just in the middle where the vocal's sitting, on your synth, that is. So that way your synth can have the full mid-range, but it's a little more left and right, and it is not conflicting for that center spot where your vocal is sitting. Similar trick is to sidechain your vocal. So you could take something like FabFilter Pro MB, the multiband compressor, and send the sidechain to Pro MB. So whenever the vocal is on, it's ducking that frequency out of your synth, and you're carving a little spot with that. Same thing, I'll do the same thing in the kick and bass. The kick is always sidechained to the bass so that the bass ducks slightly whenever the kick drum hits.
Cool. And the next question is from Jessica Graves, also from the UK.
All right.
So she said if Beyonce does like a sing rappy bit, like she does sometimes, how would you mix that in as opposed to like a normal vocal? And she has a second question, which is, what would be your bare bones setup for vocal recording?
Okay, so first question, any sort of like rap stuff, it's typically drier. There's less effects on it. It's a little more like in your face, a little more like aggressive, where something that's singy has a little more reverb on it. It's a little more lush sounding. It's going to be a little more like beautiful sounding, where like, rap stuff, you want it to be like as aggressive as possible. So making things drier is usually the way to get to that. Bare bones setup for recording vocals, she said. A Shure SM7.
Yeah.
Any sort of interface that you can afford. Audient makes a great one if you need one.
Yeah. Yep, ID14.
Shout out to Audient. And a laptop. And that's all you need, man. I've done a lot of amazing vocals like that. Anything on top of that's icing on the cake, but...
Yeah, it's so true. Exactly. So just don't need to spend loads and get started with whatever you have, and you can add to things as you go.
A good interface is key. I would go like decent mic, best interface you can afford, and then upgrade your microphone after that.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. And the last question we have from Palomita Cobbs from Mexico. And she says, how is mixing different from masculine and feminine vocals? So yeah, I was interested to hear if you kind of approach them a little bit differently.
Not really. There isn't like a fundamental difference in the way that it's approached. Maybe if I could pick one thing, female vocals are usually a little brighter and airier sounding. So sometimes I'm boosting a little of the like very, very sparkly top end just to really get them to sound like amazing and angelic. If you think of like, I haven't worked with Ariana Grande, but if you think of like her vocals, like it's always like very, very sparkly on the top end or something like that.
Yeah.
Where males, you're kind of going for like a little more richness, a little more toughness, maybe, unless it's Prince.
Yeah.
Well, he's rich and tough too. But.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. So I think we've kind of wrapped up everything that I want to talk about and the questions as well. So thank you so much, Damien, for your time. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm sure we've all learned a lot from this. So yeah, it's been great.
I hope so. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Cool. All right. Thank you. And do you have much else left to do today?
No, I think I'm off. I'm going to have a drink and enjoy the quarantine times.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, it's 5 p.m. there for you now. So yeah.
I have stems, but I think I'm done for today.
Call it. That's fine. All right. Cool. All right. Thanks, Damien.
See ya.
Okay. Bye.